Board of Education acknowledges that we're meeting on the traditional territories of the Comox First Nations. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Seconder? I'll second. Thank you. Trustee Hargraves. All those in favor? And that's carried. We have for you a consent agenda. Somebody like to move the consent agenda?
Motion to adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you. A seconder? Thank you, Sheila. Any discussion? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Reporting on in-camera meeting. There was an in-camera meeting this evening, as well as since the last board meeting, we had in-camera meetings on March the 4th and March the 10th. But I have nothing to rise and report on either of those meetings. Presentation this evening, the board welcomes Paul Berry, District Principal, Health and Safety, to give us a bit of a presentation on WorkSafe and Bill 14. Mr. Berry, thank you. And while Paul's setting up, I'm remiss in mentioning that Peter Coleman is absent this evening. He's actually in England, and while in England, he was invited to speak at Oxford and on a presentation related to the good work in School District 71. And when he comes back, we're anticipating either at a public board meeting or at a public education committee meeting that Trustee Coleman will report back. So, very, very good thing.
Thank you for the opportunity. I was asked to speak this evening on our perspectives and our policy and programs with respect to bullying and harassment. Certainly bullying has been topical in the media lately, and so this is an opportunity to share the district's perspective and what the district is doing around this area. We do have a respectful workplace, and this workplace is a workplace which has been recognized as a respectful workplace for as long as I have been in the district, over 20 years now. When I first came to the Comox Valley, this policy was one of the first things that was introduced to me, and it was one of the first areas that I was asked to develop some expertise in terms of investigating harassment at that time in the district. So we do have a policy, and the policy states this. The policy 3065 and all of the accompanying management regulations have existed here for a number of decades now. Something's out of place. Need to fix it.
It was a green.
Sorry about that. In July of 2012, a new Act, Bill 14, was passed, and it expanded on previous definitions of harassment and put in place a definition of violence in the workplace and required all employers across BC to have a formal policy and prevention plans for their workers. Through Bill 14, compensation was expanded to include a new reference in the workplace to bullying and harassment as a significant workplace stressor. Prior to July the 1st, the policy that this district has included all of the information that it currently includes, with the exception of the word bullying. So since this new bull was in place, we have reviewed the existing policies, but the only change has been to add the word bullying. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. So the Workers' Compensation Act defines the duties of employers, workers, supervisors. And under those duties, our first and most important duty is to ensure and protect the health and safety of both employees and students visiting to our district. And that includes workplace bullying and harassment. We're required to inform, to instruct, to train and supervise all of our employees with respect to the policies and with respect to how they would go about identifying what is bullying and harassment in the workplace, how they would report it, and how it would be investigated. As employers, we're required to take reasonable steps to prevent and remedy hazardous situations, and that would include bullying and harassment. WorkSafe BC defines bullying and harassment in this way, that it's inappropriate conduct or comments by a person towards a worker when that person should have known or reasonably ought to have known that the conduct was humiliating or intimidating. So that can be people within the system or outside the system, parents, members of the public. Now, Black's Law Dictionary defines that reasonable person as a person who exercises a degree of attention, knowledge, intelligence, and judgment that society requires of its members for the protection of their own and for others. The reasonable person acts sensibly and does things without serious delay and takes proper but not excessive precautions. We've all been in situations over the last number of years where we have heard someone say something and the room's gone quiet because they demonstrated that they didn't know or didn't demonstrate that reasonable person test. We know that conversations that existed in workplaces, in pubs and things like that many, many years ago are no longer accepted today. And that is the test of a reasonable person. So why is bullying and harassment a health and safety issue? For these reasons. First and foremost, someone who's bullying and harassed can feel distracted. And if they're performing work which is dangerous, that's going to be even more dangerous for them. Bullying and harassment can be both physical and psychological injury. Often lowers productivity. People's mind is not on their work. Their morale is lower to the point that they may choose not to come to work. And we see increased staff turnover. The policy defines what is workplace bullying and harassment, and it would include any of these types of behaviors. Verbal aggression and insults, vandalizing people's belongings, spreading gossips and rumors, physical assaults, cyberbullying, and so on. It also defines what it is not. So bullying and harassment is not expressing differences of opinions. We value differences of opinion. It's not offering constructive feedback in a workplace. It's not making a legitimate complaint about another worker or their conduct. It's not about reasonable management actions, including decisions about the following: job duties that need to be performed, workloads, deadlines, layoffs, transfers, promotions. These are things that we in management do all the time. It's not about instruction to workers, supervising them, or providing them feedback about their work. We evaluate our workers. That's not bullying. Nor is discipline, suspensions, or terminations. We work in a people organization. Happy to say the vast majority of people that we work with make good decisions and conduct themselves appropriately, but not always. And at times, management is required to provide support to that worker and sometimes discipline. Under workers' compensation, again, duties are defined for employers, for supervisors and workers. So as employers, we're required to ensure a healthy and safe work environment. We're required to have policy statements around bullying and harassment. We're required to work preventatively to make sure that bullying and harassment do not exist, that we have reporting procedures in place, procedures to investigate complaints when they come forward, and on an annual basis to inform, instruct, and train workers and supervisors. So that takes place every single year. Supervisors, first and foremost, all of our supervisors are required to be models of not engaging in bullying and harassment. And they're required to apply and comply with the policies that exist here in the district. And finally, workers. Every worker is required to ensure a safe environment for themselves and for those around them. They're required to take reasonable steps to prevent and address hazardous conditions. They too should not be engaging in bullying and harassment of workers or anyone else. Workers are also required to report bullying or harassment if it's observed or experienced in the workplace. And they're required to, again, comply with our policies and procedures regarding bullying and harassment. When Bill 14 came out, there was a series of policy changes around occupational health, which added details to the policy itself, or the legislation itself. And this one is one that's most important to us, that the workers must report bullying and harassment if it's observed in the workplace. We don't want anyone to be witnessing it or to be experiencing it and letting it go by. So we have procedures in place for this to happen, and those procedures can take place in a number of ways so that workers can feel comfortable to report if they feel that they are being bullied or that they have been a witness to bullying. So again, we have a distinct policy that states that bullying and harassment is not acceptable and it's not tolerated. That policy and the accompanying regulations exist on our website for all workers to view, and they are reminded of it and review it on an annual basis. So our policy includes some definitions of what bullying and harassment is and is not. It includes the requirements for annual training and review. It includes procedures for how everyone within the system can report bullying when it's taking place. Procedures for investigating, and those procedures are aligned with the collective agreements that exist within the district. And it provides processes for resolution and remedy if bullying and harassment is taking place. Since this policy was revised last year, since Bill 14 was put into place, across the district we have had very, very few instances of bullying and harassment being reported to the district. Last year, as you would expect, when a new policy is enacted, the waters are tested. And we did have 7 or 8 reports that were brought forward to us. Most were worker to worker. And of course, because we are a people organization, you would expect that there would be differences of opinions and times when people did not agree. None of the investigations that we completed last year proved that bullying and harassment was taking place. The most difficult ones for us to deal with are the ones that come from outside. Parents, for example. If the employee feels that someone from the public or a parent has come forward and not acted in a reasonable way when they're meeting with them, that's a more difficult challenge to try and deal with, but it is contained in the policy. And then, just to show you some of the resources that we have, This is the link to that school district. Of course.
Make it big.
Okay. Well, that is the link to the school district. And on that would take you to the health and safety page. And on that, there's a section for bullying and harassment that provides all of the resources for all employees in the district, including all of the things that I had mentioned previously. Questions?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Paul. Okay. Moving on the agenda, we have the Education Committee report. Trustee Caton.
So you see before you the report from the last Education Committee meeting where we were at Aspen Park Elementary School. Charles Schelling, the principal, gave us an informative update on all the initiatives happening at the school. And the board was welcome to a wonderful sign that the elementary students presented for us. Welcome, it's really nice artwork. We were very pleased and took a picture underneath it. It was kind of nice to walk into school and get a nice warm welcome. Paul Berry, and where did he just leave? Paul Berry, our district principal in health and safety, spoke about the search and rescue in school environment that he is doing. I'm not sure if many of you are aware, but our district is light years ahead of all the districts in the province in how we're preparing our staff and our school and our community for that day that we never want to happen, that may happen, whether it's disaster, earthquake, or something. And he was actually featured on Czech News, and it was really, I wish he was here to have it, but it was really nice to hear the community talk about Paul as a leader. The fire chief from Oyster River talked about how our district is light years ahead and how we prepare our students and our staff. And it was really, really wonderful to have that presentation to the board. And I believe it's ongoing training where he invited some of us to become victims, dead bodies at the Comox School at the next event. And we also had Tom DeMay, our assistant superintendent, talk about the secondary timetable and course development and how the process starts about October. And it's a very complicated process and getting the timetables for our secondary students, and how they have up until, I believe, the end of June to do some course corrections and changes. And the difficult task it is to fitting that, to trying all the wants and many. I don't envy you guys at all. It's a task upon itself. Do anybody have any questions or comments? Seeing none, motion to receive my report.
The seconder, Trustee Bolt, thank you. All those in favor? And that's carried.
And just a reminder that the next meeting is going to be held Tuesday, the first Tuesday after spring break, and we're going to be at the Cumberland Community School. Time is 6:30, and the public is welcome to come out, and please come out and tour this wonderful new campus. It's going to be a really nice adventure for us.
And we'll move to District News, Superintendent Elwood.
For those of you that have a hard copy of the Breaking Pack, this is the newly revised district news. This is a chance for us to just showcase some of the many things that are going on across the district. Won't read it to you, but just for those of you who had the amazing experience, apparently last night it was jam-packed at Markiesfeld with excited musicians, young musicians, and very proud parents. The gym was full of our grade 7 band students as they were performing, and my understanding was I didn't make it. I had a family emergency, but my understanding was the quality was just as it has been every year. There was excitement about it, and it was a great way for folks to see how far students can come, and they're very many of them in their first year of band. And so it's a great experience. It's become an annual event for us, and we'd encourage anyone, if they had an opportunity to just see young musicians excited about playing the trombone or something like that, come to Markiesfeld this time next year.
And if I may, just
Yes.
because last night there was a point made for the grade 6s. There were
right.
100 of grade 6s who were participating
Nice.
as well, and they insisted, rightly
That
so,
they
to be
should
recognized,
yeah.
and were acknowledged.
I wasn't
So
there.
It's not just the
I
same.
apologize to them. I wasn't there and didn't see that. Listed are the two dates that we actually have have had historically for about the last 4 years. We try our very best. It's a very small token of our appreciation, but we have hundreds of thousands of volunteer hours in our school district. These are members of the school communities who work outside of the normative work hours, either coaching or offering clubs and those kinds of things. It's the many parents who come into schools and help out in a variety of ways. And it's certainly the members of the community who come in and offer things after school, in the evenings, and on weekends. It's a small way for us to tell them how meaningful that is for our students, how it is that it's the recognition that learning happens inside the classroom and outside the classroom. And so our date this year for the Volunteer Recognition Dinner is Wednesday, April 29th, and we have anywhere often between 50 and 200 folks at that recognition celebration. A reminder, too, that our Board Retirement and Long Service Recognition Dinner, we start to say it now in March and April so that people remember and people will come. That is our annual retirement function for our employees, and that is on Thursday, June 11th of this year. Many of you know about Destination Imagination. At this point in time in our pre-K, so we're in our Strong Starts, we're actually offering the Destination Imagination curriculum. And it goes all the way through now to grade 12. We're the only district in the province that runs it pre-K to grade 12. And we have over 1,500 students involved in any given week in Destination Imagination curriculum of some time. And it's a curriculum that's about critical thinking and problem solving and teamwork and collaboration. And the curriculum that we have been piloting in many cases for the Destination Imagination International organization has been tested in the Comox Valley, and we're just this year testing the Strong Start pre-K curriculum, and they're loving it. They're absolutely loving it. So part of that, now we have a series of students who have been involved in Destination Imagination for almost 4 to 5 years now, leads us to be very successful at these provincial events, the national events, and the global events. And of course here you'll see the listing of teams. Many districts don't send teams or only send 1 or 2, and we have teams from McCole Road this year who'll be joining a secondary team. There will be a small team joining a big team. Highland will be sending 3 teams this year. Isfeld will be sending 7 teams. Navigate will be sending 2 teams, and you'll see in the notes that they're all competing in various parts of Destination Imagination, where we're pretty convinced they'll be very successful. 2 weeks ago, we received notification that we have been given a skills training access support grant of $5,000. That helps towards our trades programs. In this case, this money will go towards the Try-A-Trade program and some of the new initiatives that we're looking for building for next year. It will provide everything from consumable materials to teacher time, the kinds of things that we need to continue to grow our trades program. And we were one of 3 districts in the province to receive the $5,000 grants at this point in time. And then finally on the last page, there's an interesting piece here that we were very fortunate to be part of a partnership with the Mi'kmaq. They are the Vancouver Island Association for Métis folks, and they were given a grant to offer cultural workshops, and our in-kind support was to provide them with space and some resources and some staff to sort of help organize it. And they had a series of workshops for Métis families to come into Aspen Park, and they were given evening sessions to learn. They carved paddles, they learned some of the song and dance materials, they did button blanking skills, and then they created big blankets, and at the end there was a big cultural celebration. It was a very well attended. There was over 40 folks participated. Many of them were family groupings, and it was a way to showcase their heritage, their Métis heritage. And many of the folks that attended, I attended 2 of them just to have a sort of an overview of what it like. Many of them were exploring their Métis heritage for the first time. And there were grandmas with grandkids and extended families, and it was a great partnership for us to help support in a very small way by simply giving them the space and some of our expertise. And that was an excellent thing. And the others I'll leave for you to read. So thank you.
Any questions, comments from trustees? Seeing none, thank you very much, Superintendent. Move on to board committee reports. As the chair of the Finance Committee isn't present this evening, on his behalf, I'll just bring forward the minutes. They're attached. Pages 27, 28 in your hard copy agenda. There were no recommendations coming forward from the last Finance Committee meeting, but a couple of obviously important discussions, and we'll move right into those. The operating budget and the Vanier seismic.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Inside your board agendas is a briefing note on the 15-16 operating budget, and I'll just highlight a few areas contained in the briefing note. On March 12th, the school districts did receive our grant allocations from the Ministry of Education. In that announcement, the government indicated that they had increased the education block sufficient to cover the costs of the salary settlements for both the teaching staff and support staff. I also announced that they would be reducing our block by $29 million across the province. There's a little summary there of our budget shortfall for the current year. So in total, our operating budget shortfall prior to the administrative savings reduction is $1.61 million, and our share of the $29 million shortfall is $426,000, which means going into the 15-16 budget, we're looking at a $2,036,000 budget shortfall. The announcement on the administrative savings indicated that the first year would be $29 million and that amount would increase to $54 million for the 16-17 school year. The government's estimate on our share of the second year is it will increase to $795,000. Similar to what we've had to do in the past, there'll be periodic reporting on the administrative savings once that's determined through the budget process. Continue to do our consultation meetings with our internal stakeholders, DPAC, the Teachers Association, QP. Parents have sent out the survey and we're meeting with them as well. And so all that information is being gathered. Our timeline is that we're looking to have a staffing plan in place for April 24th, so that's 2 weeks after we return from our spring break. And during that 2-week period, there's a series of meetings, whether it's the management budget team or the board working session that we had planned, as well as other meetings with our stakeholders. So the goal would be is to have at least the staffing plan solidified by Friday, April 24th, so that we can move forward with the processes. I think that's where we're at as far as the budget process. Certainly, our original plan was to have the budget approved and presented to the board at the May 26th meeting, and so far that continues to hold water. So we're hopeful that all the work that we can do can wrap up by that time.
Before moving to questions, could you just take a moment to remind everyone what funding protection grant reductions actually means, given that forms
a big part of it? Yeah, that's right. So the government has a funding system in place that's called funding protection, and what it guarantees is that a school district will receive at least 98.5% of their ministry grants from the prior year. So in simple numbers, if we received $100 million grants this year, the government guarantees that we will receive $98.5 million the next year. And what that means is that translates into a 1.5% grant reduction for districts like us where our enrollment is declining. So our funding protection grant is $1.4 million, but the effect of the change from one year to the next is $1,050,000 reduction in our funding. And that will be the case for the school district for probably 3, if not 4 more years heading out. What needs to happen is our enrollment needs to stop declining so that we can work our way out of funding protection as opposed to be held into it as we have enrollment decline.
I have Trustee Caton.
You answered my question about the funding protection, but I just want to bring to the board's attention that you saw earlier in the briefing notes that the Vista Branch meeting was writing a letter to the Premier. That letter has been written, and I've just spoken to the President today, and just to let the public know that our branch, we are the largest branch of school boards. We have 12 boards. We met and we wrote a letter to the Premier, and the opening letter was, on behalf of the Vancouver Island School Trustees Association, I'm writing to express our disappointment in your characterization of our valued employees as low-hanging fruit. So our branch has taken a very proactive stance with funding, and I believe that our president today was interviewed by several local radio stations and are once again advocating for public education and the impact this is not only having in our district but on the island. I think I added it up on the island today, and when I saw the numbers, how much we were each district was being, I was quite astonished and very, very, very sad and discouraged. So I make note of trustees that letter went out today.
Trustee Trustee McDonald?
Do you think for the next 3 or 4 years then that we could encourage some of our high school students to stay for an extra year? They could get a lot of extra credits and courses, and they could do some more electives and put on plays, and they could put our enrollment numbers up by a whole other cohort.
We'll take that suggestion under
Until
advisement.
19 and then
Roll it into the budget process. Thank you. Any other comments, trustees? Okay. Thank you. We'll move on to GP Vanier Seismic.
Just to continue to update the board on it, so the Director of Operations and myself, we have finished the process of providing all the necessary information that the Ministry of Finance requires when they do their due diligence on capital projects. So we're hopeful that that everything that they require is sufficient and they can move the project forward. I believe at the last meeting we met with the government officials, and every indication that we got afterwards is that the meeting went well and they received the information that they required. In preparation, we are working hard to finalize the formal request for proposal documents that need to be issued on the assumption that we are going to receive our approval shortly. So as soon as we do get the formal announcement for government, we will be in a position to release those. Both of them are being vetted through our lawyers as well as the Vancouver Island Construction Association. So we're working hard to get everything that we can in place. In all likelihood, we are probably looking at a timeline. Most optimistic timeline is to have our construction manager and our professional consultants hired sometime in June, which likely means that we'll be talking early September or late August to start the design process. And so as soon as we have that team in place, we're probably looking at 6 to 8 months of design before we can tender to start actually getting the construction in. So we continue to look at sort of March 2016 as probably a ground turning date for when we actually start physically doing work in the schools. So continue to feel optimistic about it. Great support from both the Ministry of Education and Ministry of Finance, and I know it takes some time for them to work a project of this magnitude through the systems, but it has been a positive experience so far.
And our MLA.
And our MLA as well. Certainly the meeting that we had, I guess that was prior to the election actually, as we had a chance to meet with the Minister of Education and our MLA on this as well.
Questions or comments, trustees? Okay. Hearing none, then the recommendation for that the board receive the Finance Committee report. I'll have somebody move that?
I'll move
And a
recommendation.
seconder? Ian, thank you. All those in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Move on to board business, the 2015-16 school calendar update. Assistant Superintendent DeMeo.
Thank you. At the last meeting, I circulated the two calendars, I'll use the term regular school calendar and the DL calendar. Those calendars were out. The regular school calendar represented much similar to the one this year, a rollover status calendar with 2 weeks spring break that falls in line. More of a traditional, we would expect the third week of March around Easter for next year. And those calendars were sent out to schools to be shared and distributed as well. There was a website activated for feedback. We had some feedback, supportive feedback. The question was around the landing of which day PLCs would be on, and again, that's a separate process that's occurring. So a final detailed calendar in terms of all the days and the color coding that folks are used to seeing will come out in May. This meets the ministry requirements when we send our time to the ministry based on these two calendars here. And looking down the road, at the request of all partner groups, the calendar committee has already set their next meeting for September 24th, 2015 to look at a school calendar for the following year. It's an interesting year the way all the dates line up, and so the request was to start early and have some discussions and explore a few different things. So at the request of the committee members, we felt inclined to set our dates early, and which we have. So I would move acceptance of the report and the recommendations.
I have a quick question before I move to recommendation. I noticed some of the other districts are going to a 2 or 3 year calendar.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, and I'm being the observer, I'm wondering if it's feasible that we also maybe next year, when we talk about that, also looking at doing a 3-year, just to give some parents some long-term, with spring break and that one there. So I'm wondering if the committee would also consider that.
We could definitely do that for sure. Yeah.
So I'll motion to remove the recommendation.
So the recommendation's been moved. Do I have a seconder? Trustee Bolt, thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Item 2 under board business is notice of motion, procedural bylaw. Trustee Caton.
For the last 4 years, the board has been operating with notice of motion for new business, and it was pointed out to us that actually wasn't in our bylaw, so the notice of motion is self-explanatory, that we're going to align our bylaw with our current practice.
And that's to come forward
Next
for
month.
discussion at the April board meeting. Thank you. Secretary Treasurer.
Thank you.
For the neutral.
In your package is some information on the 2015-16 Carbon Neutral Capital Program. So this is money that the government provides to school districts to do capital projects that reduce our carbon footprint. We spend about $65,000 a year sending money to this program, which buys the tax credits or the carbon credits, all a part of government's carbon neutral strategy. Government takes that money that's put in by the school district, which totals $5 million a year, and returns it to school districts to use based on the merits of the proposals that are made. Our grant, on the third page of the package, you can see the listing of all the school districts in there. Our grant is $90,000 this year. It's up slightly from what we received the prior year, slightly below what we were hoping we would receive in the current year. So our primary focus this year is, or in the last couple of years, has been focusing on our domestic hot water heating systems and ways that we can reduce our energy consumption by having proper sized and more efficient solutions in our schools. So what's in front of you is a request for the 4 motions that are required for the bylaw. And once this motions are passed, the bylaw can be signed, and then we'll have access to the funding. And we are hoping to get full speed ahead on this so the work can be done this summer.
Trustee Bolt.
So moved.
Move the first recommendation.
We need to read about.
That school district number 71, Comox Valley, 2015-16 Carbon Neutral Capital Program, CNCP, project bylaw number 126846 in the amount of $90,000 receive its first reading.
A seconder. Thank you, Trustee Hargraves. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor? And that carries. The second reading.
I'll move that school district number 71, Comox Valley, 2015-16 Carbon Neutral Capital Program, project bylaw number 126846 in the amount of $90,000 receive its second reading.
The seconder. Trustee Bolt, thank you. All those in favor? And that carries. And we have the third reading. This one needs to pass unanimously. Should it not, then it just carries over and we'll need to come back to the next board meeting.
So I'll move that the board unanimously agree to suspend the requirements of the School Act and the board's procedural bylaw 2013 to have the third and final reading of the 2015-16 Carbon Neutral Capital Program project bylaw number 126846 at a subsequent reading.
And the seconder. Trustee Brown, thank you. All those in favor? And it's carried unanimously. And finally, we have the reader for the fourth.
That the school district number 71, Comox Valley, 2015-16 Carbon Neutral Capital Program project bylaw number 126846 in the amount of $90,000 receive its third and final reading.
Seconder, Trustee Bolt, thank you. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. Move on to stakeholder letter. Looking for some board direction. At the end of the last board meeting, the February board meeting, a good question was asked by the president of the CDTA about the board's interest in partnering, my word, I don't remember exactly what his word was, but partnering on a letter to government with respect to the challenges that we are facing around funding. I was specifically non-committal at that time, not having had any board direction, and I'm asking for that this evening. Basically, to move forward with inviting our partner groups, including the CDTA, to sign a letter that has been drafted that we want to send to government. And as a corollary to that, also just to get support from trustees that over the course of the next number of weeks, given that information changes constantly, that I have some discretion to craft letters as we see fit, and rather than waiting until a subsequent board meeting to get the approval. All letters that are sent out certainly would be distributed to trustees and made public as part of our agenda.
So I'd like to make the motion that the board work with our partner groups in writing a letter to the appropriate government ministries concerning public funding.
I would second that.
Did you get that? Get part of it?
That the board write, work with our partner groups writing letters to the appropriate government ministries, because I believe that it should be ministries regarding public funding of education.
So my only comment on that before we get too far down the road is that we're not, my thought about bringing it forward was that we are not working on co-constructed letters. This is not a,
Working with.
this is a, we will write letters and certainly invite signatories from the partner groups.
I believe working with means that we work with them in supporting that. I don't think it would entail that we write the letters, but I think we need to work with our partner groups and advocating for public education. Whether the board writes letters and they sign with, or they write letters and we work with them, I think as partnerships we can work with them, and that includes all our community groups in advocating for public education. And it should be an ongoing issue, and that doesn't, to me, define how we do it, whether the board writes a letter or CET writes a letter or whether principals or parents write a letter. I think we can work with them.
Thank you. Trustee Bolt?
As much as possible, include the stakeholders in the drafting of the letter. So it's not a school board letter, it's a stakeholder letter. That so you invite your partner groups to sit down, around the table, pick up a coffee, and what's the quality to put in this letter.
I just wanted to, in the context of writing this letter, also bring back the discussion that we had as part of our public consultation on budget meetings. We did talk a little bit about the idea about having a budget that was on general public education funding within the context of the provincial budget, and there was a general positive feeling towards us doing something on that nature and working in partnership with our groups. So I wanted to remind you and hope that this falls under that same idea, not that we would go ahead and do anything without bringing it back to the board and talk about what those plans are, but Trustee Bold and I have been sussing out the possibilities. The civic governance workshop that I was at had quite a number of really interesting presentations around public education funding, and we are seeing this type of event going on in other districts. So to let you know that based on that prior concept, we've been looking at the possibilities of bringing forward something like that as part of our budget. So I feel it kind of fits, and it certainly is a piece of my support for us doing a common letter, is that we do more than a common letter possible. Okay?
Thank you. Okay, on the question, do you have the motion, Deb? We're good?
Just read it.
Thank you.
That the board work with their partner groups in writing a letter to appropriate government ministries in advocating for public education.
All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. Okay. I have a few minutes for public questions. So I'll start with the media.
Okay, I would like to ask, just that last motion that was made there, was that specifically in reference to the addressing the funding shortfall, and similar to a previous letter that was sent to Mike DeJong and Fassbender on that's included here on March the 3rd?
Yes.
That'd be the same topic?
Yes.
And what would be the main thrust of what you hope to accomplish by writing this letter writing campaign, would you say?
Well, I wouldn't frame it as a letter-writing campaign. I would frame it as that it's a collective effort of interested and involved stakeholders, and to reflect the mutual concern and interest we have to advocate for public education. There is a view, and it's certainly not specific to just this district, that speaking with as a louder one voice may resonate in a different way with government than what has happened today. Okay.
Further on that point, I'd just like to ask as well, if it's a big chunk of money, $2 million, what are some of the ramifications that might take place if there isn't something addressed, if some action isn't taken? What are the consequences that we're looking at?
Well, the consequences are $2 million that will be less in the system, and through our budget process that we're in the midst of, we need to wrestle through with that. So in terms of where those dollars will be accounted for, we're not at that stage yet. Okay, thanks. From our partner groups, President of the CDTA.
Hello. I think, you kind of answered my question already. You still went down. But I was just going to, first of all, good job keeping your meeting short. Well done. And I won't take long. Second of all, thank you for that motion to work with partners. That's much appreciated. And teachers will be heartened to hear that. And my question was going to be, is there any interest on the board on a letter is a political statement? Is there any interest in the board in having further political type actions to inform the public about the ramifications of what's happening regarding the budget? And because we just want people to be informed. If the board is interested in partnering with us in any of those efforts, we'd be doing that. So my question is, are you interested?
So
kind of yes.
Going back to a non-committal response, and since I don't have board direction and we're at the question period as opposed to the discussion period, we'll take that under advisement and advise, and we'll talk about it. Okay.
Would you be sharing that letter with the public, for example, by publishing it in the local newspaper?
All of our correspondence are made public. Whether the papers choose to publish the letter is their choice. But we do. They get them. Yeah, we just send it. So thank you. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Have a seconder?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor? And we're adjourned. Thank you very much.